our dear viewers, and welcome to a new edition of our program Africa Today. Indeed, a deeply rooted relation and cooperation, especially in the medical sector between Egypt and Sudan, are taking place. So more details about these ties in the following report by Nahla Ibrahim.
Egypt has been pressing forward with its efforts to continue cooperation with Sudan in the health sector. Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research and Acting Minister of Health Khaled Abdel Ghaffar met this week with his Sudanese counterpart Haytham Aoud in Cairo. The top health officials discussed the epidemiological situation of the coronavirus in both countries and the rates of the vaccination rollout, stressing the importance of exchanging experience between the two countries in this regard. Abdel Ghaffar added that the meeting addressed increasing training opportunities for Sudanese doctors within the training programs offered by the Egyptian side. It was also agreed to expand the training programs for Sudanese doctors to include more subspecialists in a way that contributes to providing integrated medical services in various specialties to Sudan. Cooperation between the two countries in the field of the producing biological preparations was also discussed in the meeting, as the Sudanese side expressed aspiration to transfer Egypt's experience in the localization of the pharmaceutical industry to achieve self-sufficiency. For his part, the Sudanese Minister of Health thanked the Egyptian government for its continued support to the health system in Sudan since the outbreak of coronavirus pandemic, as well as the efforts of the Egyptian Ministry of Health to treat 1 million hepatitis C patients in Africa.
Indeed, trade relations have been expanding between Egypt and Sudan. The volume of trade exchange between Egypt and Sudan amounted to nearly 862 million US dollar in 2020, including 496 million US dollar in Egyptian exports to Sudan and 366 million US dollar in imports. Egyptian exports to Sudan are estimated at 1.5% of the total Egyptian exports. More details in the following story.
There are promising opportunities to strengthen trade ties between Egypt and Sudan in light of their history and the fact that they are neighbors. These factors generate more opportunities for economic and trade agreements that would serve them both. To advance bilateral trade ties, the Sudanese High Committee for Economic Emergencies agreed earlier this month to activate the trade agreement with Egypt. The volume of trade exchange between Egypt and Sudan amounted to nearly $862 million in 2020, including $496 million in Egyptian exports to Sudan and $366 million in imports. Egyptian exports to Sudan are estimated at 1.5% of the total Egyptian exports. Nearly 229 Egyptian projects are being implemented in Sudan with up to $10.8 billion in investments. Nearly 315 Sudanese companies operate in the Egyptian market with some $97 million in investments. The Egyptian-Sudanese economic cooperation shows how deep and developed the bilateral relations have become, as harmony has prevailed over some political, social, and economic issues. Removing Sudan from the list of countries sponsoring terrorism, its openness to the world and its receipt of loans and financial aid have all encouraged Egypt as a neighboring country to reach out to Sudan and transfer many of its development experiences to achieve integration. The historical relations between Egypt and Sudan, the geographical distance between them, the social and cultural ties, and the shares of the Nile waters are common interests between the two countries and unite their peoples. Egypt and Sudan have also achieved strategic economic partnership that was reflected in the Egyptian investment in Sudan, starting with the land infrastructure projects and the electricity interconnection line between the two countries. Sudan has major agriculture and animal wealth capable of bridging the food gap in the Arab world and achieving food security for Egypt. The transfer of Egyptian expertise to Sudan and investments serve the two countries, and stressed that the success of the Egyptian experience in Sudan would pave the way for Egyptian investments in other African countries in order to create an African economic entity.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi held expanded talks with the head of Sudan's Transitional Council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, as he is visiting Cairo. To shed more light on that issue, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by our very dear guest, Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Ambassador Bayoumi, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, how are you?
How are you, sir? Ambassador Bayoumi, how do you see the significance and the timing of this very important visit by al-Burhan to Cairo?
I am so happy and glad and satisfied seeing this event take place in Egypt. I am of the generation who was saluting the flag of the Egyptian Sudanese kingdom.
Indeed.
Also, it continued as the Republic of Egypt and Sudan until I was in the university. The chief of the student gathering in my university in Alexandria was a Sudanese.
Yeah.
So I consider that Sudan is a part of Egypt. Egypt is a part of Sudan. It was one country, and we have to continue dealing with Sudan like this. But in the 60s, Sudan and the Sudanese choose to separate themselves from Egypt in an independent country. The reason was a sort of tribes and the difference between Muslims and Africans and these things.
Yes.
But anyway, we come back to reason because of this, Sudan itself was divided in two countries, North Sudan and South Sudan. And we hope this will not continue because even the two Sudans now are threatened by more separation. And we are trying to support Sudan to have one unified leadership and one unified government, elections to take place. And I must stress here that the individual Sudanese feels very independent. They are people who are highly educated. They want everybody to treat them with considerable respect. Now we are coming back to dig deep in the file because we are with Sudan in this history, but even now in our recent life, we are members of the Arab Free Trade Area.
Yes.
We are members together in the Islamic Forum. We are members in the African Free Trade Area. Many things are combining us. Take the Group 77 of the developing countries.
Yes.
Also, it is quite obvious that Egypt is hosting millions of Sudanese living between us in Egypt, have their own properties.
Yeah.
By the way, most of them are rich. They are not poor migrants or something like that.
Yeah.
So all of these are elements of more and more strong relationship. And we are lucky, both countries, that we have now President Sisi who took all the efforts it needs to go to every place in the Arab world and every place in Africa.
Indeed.
It is a good sign. I hope that this will encourage enlarging our relations in all fields. We need Sudan because they have huge areas which we can cultivate.
Yes.
The whole Arab world needs Sudan because of this. So the sky is the limit, and really we are dealing with the most important country to our relations, our foreign relations.
Yes, indeed. Ambassador Bayoumi, do both presidents share the same views regarding number of regional and international issues, including the water file?
Yes, in my experience, in a meeting like that and at this level, everything which comes to your mind or my mind, it will be on the table.
Indeed.
10, 15 subjects they are going to discuss. They are going to discuss what is happening in Libya, because Libya is neighbor for both of us. They are going to discuss what's happening in Syria, in Lebanon, the threats in the Eastern Mediterranean, what is happening in Iraq or Yemen, because it's much closer to Sudan, what's going on in Somalia. Then we come to the big headache, which is the dam of Ethiopia.
Yeah.
And as you maybe realize that we are dealing with this matter with a very soft diplomacy. Because if you take the technical elements of this problem, I keep satisfied that it will take place for a good solution for everybody. This, in my opinion, it's a political problem which we are trying to encourage Ethiopia to come forward to sell us the electricity that will be produced, because Egypt is becoming, as you well know, a center to sell electricity for Europe. Beirut is now taking our electricity, is invited by our electricity through Jordan and Syria. We are establishing now electric line which connect Egypt with Greece, then to Europe. All these matters will bring more and more income for those who will be members in such a forum. Inshallah, I hope that this will take a good solution which will satisfy all the people of the three countries, Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia also.
Yes, indeed. Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Always a pleasure to listen to your precious input, sir. Thank you very much. Our dear viewers will go to a short break, and then we'll be back to continue our segments in Africa Today.
بينا الحدود مسير الغايب يعود وتلمس ايده بحيطان مصر قريبة وأوان يدوب جواها الغريب ما بالك وانت القريب أخويا وصاحب
وانت ماشي في مصر شايف ألف ضحكة بتناديك وانت ماشي في مصر عارف إنها فرحانة بيك قولي فين الغربة وانت وسط أهلك مش بعيد ده الفرح لو زار ديارك يلقى جوه ديارنا عيد يلقى سعد الشدة إيد
سلمى يا سلام رحنا وجينا بالسلام سلمى يا سلام رحنا وجينا بالسلام نهار وليل
الوشوش تعرف مصر قريبة.
Indeed, the African ties are always of great concern to Egypt, and in light of that, a very important roundtable organized by the African Bank for Exporting and Importing that was attended by visiting Angolan Minister of Foreign Affairs. The gathering grouped number of Angolan and high-ranking officials and business people. They discussed bilateral business opportunities and means of boosting trade and investment cooperation. Well, with that, our dear viewers, we come to the end of this edition of Africa Today, brought to you live here from our studios on ITV International. You are in the company of myself, Maïsti Rabia. Many thanks for watching.